Hey guys, hey, I was sitting in the wrong call. Whoops. I'm in the right call now though. Good. Good morning or good evening. Good evening. All right. Meeting minutes. Topics. Oh. I'm half tempted to start the call early without as many folks, just to be able to make it through some topics. But so one topic is the notion of projects or project tracking, project management, issue tracking. I'm afraid I'm tentative to even really open this up for discussion because it's kind of an opinionated thing. It's an area where we do need to get organized. In a good way, there are enough people consistently showing up that, and the project is large enough with enough going on that it can be hard for everyone to be aware of all of the happenings. So let me say that this is on my mind, and it's something that probably getting some opinions expressed on would probably be good. In the past, the tool that we had gone to use to assist with this had been using GitHub projects, because most of the things that we're tracking in the community to do are generally tracked as an issue. Also because it's free and part of, it's right next to the code. Couple of reasons why I had literally turned this off some time ago is it can be hard enough to get people to, including myself, right? Like to write up a decent issue, to do that diligence, to then on top of that, track their issue and progress it through various stages. And then to do any amount of planning about what that release would look like or what that set of features would look like. And those are all good activities to do. It's just that in the past, we really haven't had, it's been us, trying to create a community and trying to get people involved and taking what we could when we could. So maybe now is the time to bring some level of organization. My thought process there had been that we're to a point now in the community where we're at least having a few themes, people focused on a couple of areas. We almost have that. I think we'll truly have that when we actually have meetings that are with a long-standing agenda for a specific area of focus. Then we will truly have topics that people consistently focus on, and at that point, it would make sense to identify individual working groups. So in advance of that, one of the things that I've been considering doing is using a Google Sheet to help track who's working on what, because it's a lot easier to update. It's everyone that's in the community has access to the Google Drive and would have access to the Google Sheet. I don't know. So let me with a couple of folks have joined. So Jesus,
Hi.
Hey Jesus, hey. Guys, the topic that we were quickly quickly chatting about is that the topic of project and issue tracking. In a very good way, we're busy enough in the project that some of this would be helpful. A few folks have said they're not sure who's working on what. And there's enough repositories that it can be, if you're not being diligent about the queries that you're using in GitHub, you might just be looking at just the Meshery repo and kind of missing out on other activities. In the past, we'd used GitHub projects, which is kind of terrible, but it's free. In the past, we've been, sometimes it's hard enough to get people to even describe an issue well, much less come back and track an issue over its life cycle, much less have enough people showing up consistently to like plan a release and do a release. So we had used one of these in the past, but I turned it down. I just turned it back on this morning. I turned it off because it was, we just weren't ready for it. And I kind of question whether or not we're necessarily ready for this now. I guess I wonder whether or not a Google Sheet or some more static, just markdown file that says these are areas of focus. These are folks that are leading these working groups. These are the working groups. These are the folks leading the working groups. These are people. This leads into a bit more governance about the project. It's also been something that, in a very happy way, we're finally to a point where there are a number of people wearing maintainer hats, but we're finally to a point where I'd really like to clarify what those roles are, what the expectations of a maintainer is. Hopefully, we can also get into a little bit of release planning. So Shivai right now is essentially has taken on the role of the release lead for this next 0.4 release. And so what does that mean to be a release lead and what activities are involved? And Shivai and I have been over that, but just so much backlog on community and process and documentation around it. Anyway, it was a topic that I was going to bring up, or that I'm bringing up this morning. Has anyone successfully used GitHub projects? I feel like we might be let down if we try to use it. I don't know. It also, I think, requires a particular personality. Folks who, it requires diligence. Either an individual to kind of shepherd issues and curate the backlog continuously, or each individual contributor to be diligent with how it is that they're tracking things. I don't think that the latter will happen. I think that we'll have a smaller community the more of that minutia is put on the contributors. I don't think that that's fair. In general, I think the contributors should deal with some minutia and kind of, participate in the project, even the not so sexy aspects. But I don't want to shy people away either. And so anyway, this has been part of the thinking, the dilemma. If folks have thoughts, now's a good time, or pop them into the meeting minutes and things.
So I had just one, basic discussion idea that I was trying to pitch in, that, we have the community page on the layer 5 website, on the Meshery website, right? So all of the people who join the organization and sort of contribute a little, they are added to the contributors page. So what I believe is that we can, to give those people who have been working really hard, for the past few months on the project, we can just sort of make a very small distinction of the project owners, maintainers, and then contributors. So it will also be a sort of a motivation for the people to sort of jump up the ladder, because we need to obviously give recognition to the people. So if we go right now to the community members page, right? So if we can have, sort of a like distinction. So people who have been contributing the most, they can come up up, and they can be in the section for the maintainers. So like right now, Ashish, like it says maintainer, right? So to give them more credibility, we can just have that distinction on the website itself. That is like very small part in which we can sort of give them a distinction. Yes, they have been contributing, so they deserve that place.
Yeah, Shivai, I totally agree. This is in part why I haven't, it's in part why part of the conversation around organizing a release, organizing a little bit of roadmap, organizing the issue tracking is like, well, it's a little bit of a chicken before the egg, because you'd like to have, ideally have roles described. And this has been something that I've been promising to Jesus for like, I don't know, 3 months, I think. And so, Shivai, I more than agree. To the extent that there are small badges that go with that,
Exactly.
that would be nice. There needs to be. Yep, it's a bit. I guess governance is kind of the word that covers it. But it's, what does it mean to be a maintainer? What is expected of them? Are there voting rights, or what does it mean to vote? And like, just there's a lot to that. I've been excited that within the CNCF, we've all of the projects kind of suffer from in this regard. They suffer from things around CI systems, build and test frameworks, documentation, a sleek marketing website, a governance, or these project issue tracking, and just like all the litany of the softer things that aren't code, of which the sum total of them is far greater than the code. There's a new contributor strategy SIG in the CNCF that I'm hopeful was going to put out some guidance about what those roles are. Contributor, maintainer, or like there's a number of roles, kind of to your point. What that ladder is, that sequence of contribution and the recognition that comes with that, and the responsibilities that come with that. You're right that there's in no small way that I've, as a community, we've used like this page here to incentivize, to reward, to both incentivize people to do more so that they can be listed, but that also recognize those who have done work. There's questions like, well, what if they haven't been around for 5 months? Should they still be up here? Oh, you could argue it either, any which way. Hey, just because their contributions aren't recent, does that mean that they weren't just as fantastic now as they were then? Or there's a bunch of all kinds of that. I was really leery of putting this up in the first place, because all those things happen. A lot of folks will push to be up here immediately, even without having done an actual contribution yet. And it's like, well, anyway, the way that it becomes, I think, becomes fair and feels good is by having the rules, so to speak, written down, like setting the expectations up front. Like, hey, this is generally how this works. And for my part, I'm just tickled that we're even having this conversation about about people vying to be up on the site, about people desiring for maintainership. I very much so, by the way, for my part, strongly desire and have been trying to get people into maintainer roles. It's so very much so needed for people to have a sense of ownership over the project, not just a sense, but literal ownership, for people to have that buy-in, to be able to lead the other areas, to advance the project in multiple parallel streams. The coronavirus has been horrific to Layer 5 being a funded entity that can really help it get off the ground. It's been really tragic in that regard. The coronavirus has been extraordinarily helpful with respect to there being quite a few people who have extra time and are deciding to put that extra time into the community, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm overwhelmed, and it's not the intention for it to be me anyway. Now, I shouldn't say I'm overwhelmed, because There's a few people who are wearing maintainer hats. We haven't clarified what it means to retain the maintainer hat. So I guess to talk about this a little bit further, I consider that, once a contributor, always a contributor, that you've made a contribution, whether it's code or documentation or screenshot, or you're a prominent user and you've been giving feedback or what have you, that those contributions would stand the test of time. There are other roles, being a reviewer, being a maintainer, being being a tester, being a release lead, there's a bunch of roles, that those are probably a bit more transient in nature. The time matters. Whether or not you're present probably matters for some of those, because that you need to be kind of active in how There's a lot of thought. There's a bunch of prior art here on from the Kubernetes project, from the Knative project. I've been speaking with those community leaders about finding these roles and about having them written down and about sort of sharing those broadly. So suffice.
Yeah, I was saying that, and also in regard to the point that you had raised for the first discussion regarding the project management. So, like, is it possible if we are looking forward to go for either something like Trello, or I mean, we can possibly have a look at those as well. So there are some specific project management tools that are specifically built around GitHub. For example, there is a project management tool which follows the Agile framework and Scrum. If you're following that, so it's Zube, Zube. So it has been specifically made for tracking all your different GitHub issues. So I mean, generally a project management tool will not be geared towards GitHub, but since our main entire code base is towards it's towards GitHub, right? So I mean, we can possibly just have a look at a project management tool that is only geared towards managing the pull requests and the issues, and how those are being assigned to people. In that way we can have a live update on the page as well. So since we'll be integrating the project with such kind of a management tool, it will automatically bring up all the new issues and pull requests that also are being created. So I mean, in terms of a Google sheet, we'll have to manually add the new the new pull requests and the new issues that have been created, and then manually assign them on the Google sheet. So if it is being done automatically by a third party service, so the only problem will be that if we have to pay, because like in limited for a limited or a free tier, I guess it won't have like more than 5 or 10 people who can work at the same time or something. So if you want, we can have a look at a project management tool specifically built for GitHub.
Right. Yeah, Shivai, those are all great points. I totally agree. Yeah, I should have clarified that when I was saying Google Sheet. What I had meant was much more of a static listing, just to say Shivai UI or whatever, like Shivai management UI, like something that was relatively static, long-lived in nature. That was sort of the, hey, if you wanted to talk about that area, Shivai's focused there, or that's kind of his. But yeah, did you do any other? So Trello is certainly a tool that I'm intimately familiar with. It's a tool that I've seen the OpenShift team use in tracking their open source project. I do understand it has any number of integrations, and that those integrations are limited by free tier usage. I do understand that GitHub has been making progress on like on its project boards, and that one of the attractive things to a project board for GitHub is that you can create that project board at an org level, which is nice because we do have so many. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to be able to use the native thing, or the things that are native to where the work is being done.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I guess it would also be transparent to those who are not members of community.
Totally.
Otherwise, they will have to join Trello or I guess Asana or some other tool that we are using.
Right. Yeah.
So
There's no small component to that, Naveen, that I think that you didn't say, but that I would attack on, and that is that it's important to me that the posterity of the works that the community does is maintained, that there's a historical reference for things that people have done, so that you can, any number of years from now, point back and say, yeah, hey, I was part of this, here were my contributions, those are public. I'm bringing up the Istio site to show that, to give an example of one of the ways in which they do community. I think there's a community repo. In the repo, it talks about the governance and the steering committee and the roles and just the working groups and just like all kinds of stuff. And then, but one of one of the things that I was considering when I was saying Google Doc or the Google Sheets, which I'll probably stop saying because it's probably not the right answer, but was I was really sort of intending it to be something like this, to say that, hey, there are some long-lived functional areas that Meshery is, that people within the community are focused on. And here is, whether it was individual parallel streams, like individual working groups, that if there's like here in the Meshery community, there's one for performance management, a whole set of topics around that. There's one for configuration management, so a whole set of topics around that. Maybe mesh sync, maybe that's part of configuration management, I don't know. But that we would describe it, part of what I was considering is that we would describe it like this, that you're then able to, it used to be the case that the individual tech leads were listed here as well. I think that that's been updated. It points out, hey, where's that Slack? Where's the corresponding Slack channel? Where's the meeting minutes for that? Where's the link to join that weekly call? Blah, blah, like, yeah, as we go to, in a good way, we're at a point by which we need to scale the community at least by one call, at least. So maybe I'll leave it with this, with if there are folks interested in trying to advance the line of thinking here, that maybe what we can do is, if this is a suggestion that people are aligned with, to go ahead and play around with what it looks like for an organization-wide project board, see if where the native tooling falls short, if it does at all. One of the nice things about the native tooling is that you can automate a little bit of the flow if you're kind of teaching the contributors in a general way to either tag their issues with certain things. Like we do right now, we try to get people to auto close their issues when they submit a PR. We try to have them say, include keywords like, this PR fixes issue number such and such, so that the issue auto closes. Same thing here for automating a bit of the workflow. I think you can have GitHub automatically move an issue from like the to-do column to the in-progress column when it's assigned or when something happens. Is this a point of interest for anyone on the call? Would anyone like to maybe take a stab at
if no one else is stepping, like I can do that.
and if anyone gets has a hankering for it after the call as well, I guess it's poke Naveen. Naveen, I'll make sure that you're able to create a project board, and you've got the right access and things to do that. So, okay, nice. Well, that was one topic. One of the other topics we'd had was Nipur was going to chat about updating Meshery CTL, the command line interface. And the challenge that we're having with the bash script right now, funny that Nick is on, because Nick is leading a project that has a very well done installer. So the topic here is that there's a CLI, it's a Meshery CTL. It's built using the Cobra framework. There's a subcommand called update in Meshery CTL. That update command will reach out to Docker Hub and pull down any new images for any of the Meshery containers. That's good. What it doesn't do, though, is it doesn't self-update, meaning if there's a new version of Meshery CTL, when you run the update command, it doesn't update Meshery CTL in place. A couple of reasons for that is, one, you may have installed Meshery CTL using a bash script or the brew, we call it the brew recipe or the brew, but anyway, the brew package that we have, or very shortly there will be a scoop package. And so, if we were to try to include that logic inside of this Meshery update command, there's a bit of things to figure out. And so consequently, we're not including, Meshery CTL doesn't update itself. It's not a self-updating thing. Okay, fine. But, that's one topic. The other one is that when a user goes to update Meshery CTL by rerunning the bash installer, I think on Linux-based systems, it's not having success updating itself. And I assume that's just a permissions issue. Word, you want to? Or Nick, sorry, I didn't see that you, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I've been doing a little bit of thinking about this problem because I'm having exactly the same problem with sort of one of my projects, and kind of what I'm thinking around the update process is somehow to tag how the binary was installed. So for example, if you installed it with brew, to somehow like get brew to drop a file or something. I don't know, like, but basically then with the update command, what I'm thinking is you run a check, and because the Meshery CTL understands from where it was installed, it could then say to the user, hey, there's a new version of Meshery CTL as well, which needs to be updated. Either run this command, which is like sudo update, get update, brew update, or whatever's, or it could even say, would you like me to update, and it just does it for you. The other thing that you can actually do around kind of Meshery sort of CTL, or just kind of the installers, you can just overwrite the binary, but I know that the likes of brew will twist and complain because it'll be like, hey, you've got this binary and this is not the linked binary. But like, there may be a way to kind of to like circumvent that.
Yeah, let me regurgitate that. Nick, thanks for engaging here because this is helpful. And Nick, by the way, yeah, hey, I'm not, again, not blowing smoke up your skirt. Rather, the shipyard run installer is pretty, that's just so funny. It's just a little soft thing like that makes such a, it's just that medicine goes down so well for people when they go to have that first experience with the project, which, I'd be curious, Nick, about your feedback. If you've ever run Meshery CTL start, it'll auto open whatever your default browser is, and I'm hopeful that's been a pleasant, delightful experience for people, and not one of like, what the hell is going on.
I really like that as an experience because the way I look at it is, it's the thing that I do next anyway. So like. The one thing that when I first implemented some of that stuff in my own stuff, I was a little overeager. It kind of would pop up a little bit too frequently, but yeah, I really like the fact that it kind of opens the browser up for you, because like in terms of the tasks, literally that's probably the next thing you're going to do anyway. So it's
which is to say, like, actually, I think if you do the bash install, you get it downloads Meshery CTL, and then it invokes Meshery CTL start, which invokes downloading all the containers, and then they spin up, and when they're done, so it's one command to install and run. Anyway. And so Shipyard was not only very similar to just a fantastic experience like that, but also, and granted, I've like ran it once, and so but I was so impressed by that, but also the notion that that you're able to choose what blueprint you want to deploy at that same time. Also, one of the things that got me hung up in general, and Nupur, I hope that this discussion is helpful, because I know some of you guys have had to deal with this already, but there's a bit of, you got to give a little bit of thought, I think, when you go to, there's a bit of redirection and a little bit of DNS-like thinking that over time, like, first of all, if you can try to provide something fairly slick, and it's this little short command that people feel comfortable running, like, oh, okay, I see that that's going to do something, or maybe it's hidden inside the back, but you send it to an initial redirector, if you an initial script that figures what your architecture is or something, and then figures out that like you're going to apply a blueprint or you're not, or you're going to but to Nick, to your thought that that resonates very well, that hey, it's not much ado when you do the initial install of Meshery CTL or Shipyard, that you, for Meshery, and this I think follows some sort of a typical convention, that underneath the home folder there's a hidden .meshery folder, and then hey, yeah, to your point, like drop a note that it was a brew install deal. I think the gotchas could be, or the edge cases come in where they did the original brew install, and then they figured out they didn't want to do it, so you just got to make sure you catch it.
Yeah. So what you could do. And I was kind of thinking about this while you were talking, because you're absolutely right. Like, what you could do is potentially, so you know the architecture, right? Meshery CTL knows the architecture. It knows it's running on a Mac or running on Linux or running on Windows. So you're limiting your options. You know that if it's running on let's say a Mac, there are three different ways you could get the binary: manually from GitHub releases, homebrew, or the bash installer. If you've done GitHub releases of the bash installer, then that's kind of like one grouping. The other is homebrew, because like you don't want to update and then screw up homebrew. But what you could do is you could interrogate homebrew's sources library. You could, like, I'm thinking it could be like a little library where you can it could check for the presence of the Meshery tap in homebrew, and if it finds it, it knows that you're maintaining Meshery with homebrew. Therefore, when you do the update, it's going to do the brew side of things, and the same for for Linux. If you're running like a Linux package manager, which is using like the apt-based Debian-based stuff, you can check apt sources for the presence of the Meshery, and then if it's RPM, if it's a SUSE or Red Hat or something, you could check the Yum repos. So I think there's actually a quite an elegant way to maybe cover, I reckon, maybe even 99% of cases to figure out how somebody got the binary onto the machine, so that you're not like screwing over somebody if they've used a package manager and then you've just done a raw binary update on them. And then of course and then if you've got that fallback, you could always just say, hey, I can't, if you can't determine what they're using, you just say, hey, you need to update Meshery, use your package manager or this install script, or just point them at the documentation. I think from a user experience, that could be really nice. But I'm leaning towards the concept of like, I'd like it just to kind of do it for me. Like I want it to prompt me if I'm using a package manager, but I think as automated, if you can get it as automated as possible, then that's a nice user experience for folks. What I recommend doing is check out, I think it's Glue CTL, or it might be Squash CTL, but like Solo have got this really nice way of doing their updates. It kind of says, hey, you're using version 14 and 15 is the latest version. Would you want me to update it for you? And I kind of just think it's a nice user experience. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was even out of date. Click the button and boom, it's done. I'm a lazy person. I like, but there's some ideas. I think maybe that's some stuff that I'm thinking about too. I think.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then some, right, we kind of yeah, I've seen that with other command lines where it's very evident that they're making a quick call out to the GitHub releases site and just grabbing latest release, and they're checking the, and I think with and even that can be maybe since that's a single endpoint call, that might be the easiest way to do the quick determination to see if you're out of date. And then, yeah, and then to your point about like, well, hey, did they do a brew install or did they do using an app?
There's definitely a GitHub. There is a library. If you Google Golang like version or updater or something, because I came across it yesterday or the day before, and what it will do is it'll basically look at GitHub and it'll look at the latest tag and it'll kind of like decipher from the semvar of the latest tag based on what you've encoded as your current release, and then determine if you need an update. It's pretty simple logic, but cool. I'd be honest, I decided not to go down that route when I put some code in there. And what I actually did was I have a text file, which is on the Shipyard Run website, which has the current version in it. In my build process, whenever I tag, it just updates that file. So all my update logic is basically what's the kind of the tagged version baked into the CLI, what is the version which is on the website, and it's just simple, but it seems to work, and it's literally like 4 or 5 lines of code or something. Yeah. I'm happy to share. It's not even creating a library out of.
Yeah, no, but actually the thing that's slightly more powerful about that approach that you've taken is that then you can build in any application specific logic that you want for keying off of, like, hey, maybe actually one of the things that we've got as a challenge, Nick, is, and we've written up a lot about it, and Jesus, I know you and I have talked about this as well, that is the notion that there needs to be a couple of release channels, sort of a stable release and an edge release. And so Nick's approach with dropping a publicly available text file, I consider could potentially help with like identifying a release channel, because you have different versions for different,
Yeah, and you could, in that file, you could literally just put, you could just encode a JSON blob or something. Yeah, I think that's kind of really interesting. Like, I think the whole beta channel thing is really good. Good user experience for, it's like super simple code there. It's really good user experience for people, because like, if you want to try the latest features, you kind of don't want to go through the whole like.
Yeah,
just some ideas. Anyway, it's kind of like just some sort of what I was thinking about the other day.
No. What's actually, I don't know, somewhat curious to me on this topic is the fact that this is a universal challenge to is almost every project out, like nearly every well done project out there. It's like, and the same thing. And so you know what I'm going to say next, which is like, why is this not solved? But along those same lines is telemetry, which is we want to understand if there's anyone even using it on Windows anywhere. Maybe it's just not even worth, what.
Yeah, I think telemetry is a really great kind of thing. It's a big problem, but I think it's incredibly useful. And like, I used to work. I used to work for a big supermarket in the United Kingdom, department store, supermarket, Marks and Spencer. And I used to build their e-commerce iPhone and iOS apps as among many different things. But telemetry was huge. Like, we had telemetry in the iOS apps. We wanted to know if there were errors. We wanted to kind of know whether people were using particular commands, and all we would do is basically just pumping that sort of stuff into like Google Analytics. But it's really, really useful things to have, because if you're having a conversation around like, should we deprecate this feature in the CLI because we don't think anybody uses it, or you can take that empirical approach by using the analytics. But to your point, I don't actually know why there isn't a package in Go which kind of manages update checking across different architectures and also handles maybe basic analytics. It would feel sensible that kind of is like a Cobra plugin or something.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something to build, or maybe that'd be a cool little Easter hack.
Yeah. Really. If no one ever touched that subcommand, then why are we? Yeah. To your point, like that. Actually, the point of telemetry, to me, that is exactly where an open source foundation. That's the type of value that it should be providing around the legalese of the collection of that telemetry, the anonymity of it, or the and yeah, it's kind of shocking that isn't. So Nupur, I went off the deep end here on the thoughts. Apologies. Do you want to? I think you guys have a proposal for how to fix the current issue with the Bash installer and it updating Meshery CTL.
Hi everyone. I was going through the file which actually installs Meshery in the machine, which is the Bash file, and I I gave the link of the line which I got my eye to look into the issue in the chat box. I have given the link of it. Everyone can go and I went through it and got to know that this is the line which is actually not able to update the version of Meshery to the level above than 0.3.9. And I was not able to understand what exactly this line was doing. So I also checked the update.go file of the Meshery CTL, because that's where the problem actually occurred. So I realized that there was not much to do. So I contacted Anand if he could help me. So he also suggested that there is something wrong with this specific code of line only. So when I asked him, so he said that this code of line is inspired from STOs, how STO work to install the versions. So I personally did not understand how this specific line of code is working. So I asked Anand for some help. So he suggested that uh, he look into it using the STO file as well, and he suggested that the part where we are giving the sort function, the sort hyphen t, this part is causing issue. So we need to replace the whole part. I have also mentioned the replace code in the document. I can give it here as well. So this is the current suggestion by Anand. I have looked into the issue. Like I tried that how we can function with this, but was not able to understand it properly. So that is the progress until now. Anand and I have reached. So
Nice. Nice. As long as we're already, I think that Anand, like a long time ago, we were already confirming that if we're going to use curl here, that's present on the system, which I think it mostly universally is, as opposed to wget. But as long as we're pre-flight checking that, I think we're.
Yeah, actually, we have a pre-flight check for that. So, yeah, we can change it with duplicate as well. So that's not an issue.
Oh yeah, and Nupur, this statement here is actually doing the very same thing that Nick and I were just talking about going out, referencing a GitHub API to grab the latest release tag.
that I heard the conversation and I realized that that would be a nice approach to look into the version of Meshery. It will always get the latest one, and we will not be stuck in this problem any longer. So yeah, I heard the conversation and I found it fruitful for my work as well.
Nice. Okay, good. Good. So it wasn't a bunch of babbling that, okay. So yeah, did anyone have any other comments on the approach? Because this, to me, given the current framework that we're using, seems sound. It's Sim, actually, we can't hear you very well. It's really soft for me, anyway.
Can you hear me?
Just barely. Am I the only one that can barely hear Sim? Okay, yeah, I think Sim, I think that's everybody's having an issue.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
It's still the same. Okay, while Sim works on audio issues, let me just say how tickled I am that you guys arrived at this solution. Any other comments on the
Apart from this issue, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Like the perf command now uses the FMP. Like before, we were using logres for uh, the statements that are printed on the screen terminal. So those are the things that are missing. So it would be great if you can change it. Like I have some progress on it, but today I saw actually I forgot to self-assign myself that with that issue, and uh, I don't know. I think Kush has self-assigned that issue to himself, so I think I should just uh, give my progress to him, and he can continue on that. Maybe that would be helpful, or I will.
very good. So Nan, this is more or less a reminder to everyone that works on Meshery CTL that the logging library that we've chosen to use is Logres. And so I think that's what you're doing, is saying, hey, everyone, please be reminded that that's to leverage that library consistently across Meshery CTL commands. Okay.
Yeah, actually, using that would be helpful.
All right. Got about 8 minutes left. There's a,
Hello, Lee. Can you hear?
yep. Hey, Simon. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Lee, I just thinking about the problem here, where we're just thinking about we updating the version of the Docker images that we have available Docker Hub whenever we update the Meshery update CTL update, but it's not updating the current version of the Meshery. So the Nick is asking about that. We have a version tag available on Docker Hub. So that's a one problem that I recently saw someone has in the YouTube, that they have they're customizing the GitHub action there. So they have built their own GitHub action that they have checked the current version, and whenever the newest version is pumped in, then the GitHub action is triggered. The custom you wrote GitHub action can be on you can write on the JavaScript, or you can do it on the on Docker file for that. So I think we could do that with GitHub action approach as well. I think that can solve the problem that we're talking about here. Can we go?
Nice. Okay.
So Sam, are you talking about creating a GitHub action, a new GitHub action that will identify the current version, the stable current version?
Yes, I'm actually asking about there's a particularly marketplace in the GitHub action. We could look for that some action already there that can solve this problem or not. If not, we could do as to build a custom as well. We should look for the newest version. Whenever the Meshery update command hits, it go the GitHub action trigger and check for the newest version. If it's not there, it doesn't update the Meshery. But there's a new version tag available, then custom build a custom GitHub action trigger, and then the release pipeline actually update all of the newest version. I think we could do we could search for the GitHub marketplace. Can anybody wrote that function as well? If that we can use it, we can use that. Otherwise, we can wrote the custom for the needs.
Okay, okay, got your points. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. On a related note there, Simon, we have recently taken advantage of GitHub's official action that they recently published, which is working a little better for us than the one that the Azure team had published before. So that's good. I think part of the challenge with the GitHub action approach is the real-time nature of the need to look up the version number. In general, I agree that GitHub Actions are pretty interesting. There's a bit more power to them than we're necessarily taking advantage of today. I think, kind of an interesting way, one of the ways in which we've taken advantage of a GitHub action is we'll notify, I think most of you know this, but we'll notify Slack whenever someone stars the project. So we'll send a notification in Slack that just says someone has started the project. And recently we've updated it to include a count of the stars. So yeah, there's some creative ways to use GitHub Actions. And if Shubham is on.
Lee, I am actually looking for some client as well for that kind of a reason. They want to know that whenever the new version of their repository generated, so they have trigger an action, and they can deliver they can update the URL of production URL. So I already working with that. So I can share this code with Nurpur. So we can leverage that. Is it feasible for this kind of project? I think it's a great approach there because there's already version tags available, and we can do a lot of more cool things with GitHub Actions. I think other projects think they kind of do the same, but in a more so different or simplest way. So I can give the projects to Nurpur, and he can pursue on that.
Nice, nice. Thank you. With the 2 minutes we have left, Shivai, do you want to say a quick word about the forthcoming release?
Yeah, so I was just making all the PRs, and I'll just share the screenshots also with you, and I'll be writing a blog post on this as well after prior discussion with Lee. So today I'll just be having discussion on the final pull requests and whatever features that are being added to the release. So there are a couple of features that we have discussed which will not be added, but I'll be mainly focusing on those particular features which are either complete new features that are being added, like the Meshery CTL and whatever changes have been made to that, or the major changes that we'll be including. So those are the ones that I've included for the release for 0.4.0.
Beautiful. All right. Any other topics people want to chat about before we sign off for today?
Lee, I'm working on the CI/CD system for our LFI project in the GitHub there. So previously we're talking about we have command line and server code within the same repository. So last time we were thinking about can we do it separately or can we do it on the same? I'm working on that. So I have gone through more time there. So anybody here who has can give me a walkthrough on that so I can grasp the whole project there because I think it's probably I need some more advices and more what every code line there so I can give up proper CID system for that.
I'll immediately jump in and say that I just put a link in the chat and it's in the meeting minutes as well. There's a document called the Meshery build and release strategy that I think Simon might be quite just what you're looking for. It could, because it defines how it is that we're building the systems, how often we should do a release, how those are, where the artifacts are stored, how we might be versioning the project, and so on. That's probably what you're looking for. It also talks about the notion that we need a couple of release channels, but we don't have those yet. And so the project is in a little bit of a precarious position where when we merge to master for Meshery, that's essentially a release. And that was okay early on. We need to have some more rigor and some more controls around that, though. Could be a really interesting area for you to dig into, Simon. That would be good.
Okay, Lee, thanks. I can definitely look into that and get to know that.
Lee, I just wanted to ask that should I approach to the problem with Anand's suggestion or make some changes to that, or should I approach to the problem with what Sam sir suggested, or should I look which one is going better?
Simon's thoughts are very well received. There is much to do within the actions. We'll probably leave that area for the build and release focus. The solution that you guys have, literally the code that you pasted in, is going to work very well. It'll be a sweet resolution.
Lee, I will add it to that. Just send some code, some snapshots of code, what GitHub Action do. So if Nurpur thinks that's a good approach and he can grasp that concepts easily, he can do that well. Otherwise, whichever approach is taking, it's definitely up to you. I can share the codes for do for sure for code tomorrow.
So definitely share those codes with me. I look into them and will check if there is a problem.
Okay, definitely. I just notified you in the Slack channel whenever I update it into my GitHub repository. So stay connected.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you. So for now, I will just update this one, and we'll look into the suggestions Sam sir give to me, and we'll work on that. If that will be a great approach, we'll definitely go with it. Am I right, sir? Yes.
That sounds great. Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Okay, we've made people late to their next one. At least we're consistent in how we do that. Okay. Very nice to see all of you guys. Hope to see you on Friday.
Nice to see you, Lee.
You guys at my time. Great suggestions. See you, Fanji. And Naveen.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.